The turbulence began as a small shudder, the kind most passengers hardly notice, but within moments it grew into a violent shake that made coffee cups jump and seatbelts snap taut across laps. Flight 782 had taken off smoothly from Denver, promising a calm 2-hour journey, yet something in the air felt different, heavier, uneasy. Passengers exchanged nervous glances, while flight attendants tried to keep their smiles steady. In the cockpit, Captain Morris, a veteran with over 20 years of flying experience, felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He tried to brush it off as fatigue, but the pain grew sharp and unmanageable. Before he could call for help, his vision blurred and he collapsed forward, his hand sliding off the control column. The aircraft dipped for a moment before the startled co-pilot grabbed the controls, heart pounding. He radioed the cabin crew, his voice trembling with fear he couldn't hide. In the cabin, the flight attendants rushed down the aisle with urgency they could no longer conceal. Passengers whispered anxiously, sensing something was terribly wrong. A child cried. A businessman gripped his armrest. But in seat 12C sat a woman who had remained perfectly still through it all. Emily Carter, traveling alone, watched the flight attendants exchange frantic looks. Her calm face contrasted the rising panic around her. Emily had chosen this flight for a quiet escape. Her past life left intentionally unspoken, hidden beneath the silence she carried with her. She hadn't planned on standing out or being noticed. She certainly didn't plan on being the only person capable of saving a plane full of terrified strangers. The flight attendant's trembling voice broke the anxious air. If anyone on board has medical training or flying experience, please come forward immediately. The statement hung heavy over the cabin. No one moved. Some passengers looked down, others shook their heads helplessly. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, as if weighing a decision she already knew she would make. With a steady breath, she rose from her seat. The nearest passengers stared at her, surprised to see someone actually respond. "I'm not a doctor," she said quietly, "but I've flown before." The flight attendant blinked, unsure what that meant, but hope flickered in her eyes. Emily stepped into the aisle, unaware that every step she took would change the fate of everyone on board Flight 782. Emily followed the flight attendant toward the front of the aircraft, feeling dozens of frightened eyes tracking her every movement. The closer she got to the cockpit, the clearer the panic in the air became. The co-pilot's shaky voice leaked through the half-open door as he struggled to keep the plane steady. Inside, the situation was worse than she expected. Captain Morris lay unconscious, slumped over the controls, his breathing shallow. The co-pilot, barely in his late 20s, looked pale and overwhelmed, sweat dripping down his temple as he tried to manage the aircraft alone. He glanced up at Emily, desperation flashing in his eyes. "I can't do this by myself," he admitted, his voice cracking. "We're supposed to be landing soon, and the turbulence is getting worse." Emily stepped forward, gently helping move the captain aside. Her eyes scanned the instrument panel with quick precision, the layout familiar yet slightly different from the fighter jets she once commanded. But flying was flying, and emergencies were emergencies. Her instincts didn't hesitate. "Listen to me," she said, her tone firm but calm. "I flew F-16s for the Air Force. I can help you, but you'll have to trust me." The co-pilot stared at her, stunned. For a moment, he seemed unsure whether to believe her, but another jolt of turbulence shook the aircraft violently, forcing his decision. "Okay," he breathed, relief surprising even him. "Okay, please take over." Emily slid into the captain's seat, adjusting it with practiced movements as her hands moved confidently over the controls. Though commercial planes were heavier and slower than fighter jets, the principles were the same: stability, awareness, control. With one steady pull, She leveled the aircraft, easing it out of its dangerous dip. The co-pilot let out a shaky sigh as some tension left his shoulders. "Thank you," he whispered, watching her in awe. But Emily wasn't thinking about gratitude. She was already analyzing their altitude, fuel levels, heading, and weather conditions ahead. Every second mattered. She reached for the headset and placed it over her ears. The familiar hum of radio chatter filled her mind, instantly transporting her back to missions she thought she had left behind forever. "Control, this is Flight 782. We have a medical emergency. Captain incapacitated. I am acting pilot, preparing for emergency landing," she announced with calm authority. The co-pilot stared at her with renewed hope. Whatever happened next, he knew they had a fighting chance, with Emily Carter in the cockpit. Air traffic control responded immediately, their voices sharp with alertness as Emily guided the plane through the rough air. "Flight 782, confirm acting pilot," the controller said, clearly trying to understand how a commercial airliner had suddenly changed hands. Emily's voice remained calm and steady. "This is Emily Carter, former United States Air Force fighter pilot. Co-pilot is assisting. Captain is unconscious. We need priority clearance for emergency landing." There was a brief silence, then a firm reply. "Copy that, Emily. You have priority. Diverting all other traffic. Maintain current heading. Runway will be cleared." The co-pilot exhaled shakily, still trying to process the extraordinary turn of events. He watched Emily as she worked, each movement smooth and confident, as though she had spent her entire life inside cockpits, which, in truth, she nearly had. She made constant adjustments, correcting altitude fluctuations caused by the turbulence. The aircraft's nose dipped again, but Emily countered it instantly, her grip steady, her focus absolute. "We'll need to descend soon," she said. "Weather is getting worse. Tell the cabin crew to prepare everyone." Down in the cabin, passengers felt the tension shift. Some sensed hope. Others clung to their armrests, praying silently. None of them knew the woman in 12C had once flown through war zones, executed emergency landings under fire, or made decisions in seconds that determined whether she lived or died. Emily heard the co-pilot's voice over the intercom as he briefed the passengers, but her mind stayed locked on the instruments in front of her. Memories flickered through her thoughts, late nights in hangars, the roar of engines, instructors shouting commands, the weight of responsibility she once carried every day. She had walked away from all of it years ago, choosing a quieter life far from danger. Yet here she was again, facing the sky's unforgiving test with lives depending on her steady hands. Emily tightened her grip on the throttle. "We'll begin initial descent now," she said, glancing at the co-pilot. "Follow my lead, no sudden inputs." The runway lights appeared faintly in the distance, glowing like a beacon through the thickening clouds. Emily's heartbeat steadied, her mind sharpening with familiar clarity. "We're going to get them home," she whispered, almost to herself. Outside, the wind howled, shaking the wings, but Emily held the plane firm. Whatever waited in the next few minutes, she was ready. The sky had challenged her before, and she had never backed down. The runway grew clearer with every passing second as Emily guided Flight 782 through the storm clouds. The aircraft shuddered violently, the wind slamming against it in unpredictable bursts. The co-pilot gripped the edges of his seat, trying to steady his breathing. Emily, however, remained focused, her eyes fixed on the illuminated path below. She eased the throttle back, adjusting their descent angle with gentle precision. "We're coming in a bit high," she murmured, making another correction. The co-pilot nodded quickly, following every instruction she gave. Air traffic control's voice echoed in her headset, calm but urgent. "Flight 782, runway is clear. You are authorized to land. Emergency crews are standing by." The landing gear lowered with a heavy thunk, vibrating the entire cabin. Passengers gasped and clung to each other, bracing for whatever came next. Emily felt the familiar rush of adrenaline she once lived for. She steadied her breathing, blocking out everything except the instruments, the runway, and the aircraft responding beneath her hands. As they approached the ground, the turbulence surged again, trying to push the plane off alignment. Emily fought it with smooth, decisive movements. "Hold steady," she whispered to the machine as if speaking to an old friend. The wheels hit the runway with a sharp jolt, bouncing once, then again before settling firmly. Emily applied the brakes in careful, measured pulses, keeping the aircraft straight despite the wet surface. The engines roared as the speed dropped. Then, finally, the plane rolled to a slow, controlled stop. For a moment, there was silence. A deep, collective silence as the reality of survival settled in the hearts of everyone on board. Then the cabin erupted with cries, laughter, applause, and overwhelming relief. Emily removed the headset, her hands trembling only now that the danger had passed. The co-pilot stared at her with awe. You saved us," he said softly, barely able to process what he had witnessed. Paramedics rushed in to take Captain Morris away, but not before one of them paused, recognizing the steady courage in Emily's expression. She simply nodded, brushing aside the praise. As passengers filed out, many paused to thank the mysterious woman from 12C. Some hugged her, others cried. Emily offered a gentle smile to each of them, but part of her remained quiet, humble, unchanged. She hadn't come seeking recognition. She had only done what she knew, what she had always been trained to do. And as she stepped off the aircraft into the cool night air, Emily Carter knew one thing for certain: once a pilot, always a pilot.